Welcome back to the Wizards of Amazon podcast, where we cover all things private label. My name is Carlos Alvarez, and I will be your host for the show. Today, I have a very special guest and amazing sponsor of the Amazon Seller Meetup Group, Colleen Quattlebaum, the marketing manager from EcomEngine. What's up? How are you doing?
Yes, good. Doing great. Hailing here from Richmond, Virginia. So good to talk to you.
Yes, definitely amazing. You know something? This is probably the first podcast that we scheduled and there was no rescheduling. I think with every other podcast I've done to date, there's been this scheduling conflict issues. We set a date, we stuck to it, and here we are.
Well, with everybody working from home and our schedules freeing up from our social lives, more time to work, and yeah, we've been pretty available.
Definitely. We're recording this on June 2nd. I don't know how things are doing in Virginia and Miami. In addition to riots, sadly, we're staying self-quarantined here in the house, and a lot of other ones are still like just beginning to peek their head outside. So I hope things are definitely better in Virginia.
Yes, pretty status quo to what you're seeing down there as well.
So this is your first time here on the show, and I have no doubt that I'll be trying to take advantage of your time in the future and have you back on the show. But you're like, you know, a great deal about Amazon. I mean, EcomEngine does a lot of stuff. Today in the episode, though, we're going to talk about reviews. So I guess mostly product reviews, but also seller reviews and just the overall impact that it has. I think a lot of people feel that they can't succeed on Amazon because it's impossible to get reviews. I don't know what your opinion is. I have a feeling I know what it is, but mine is like, it hasn't been a better time to get reviews on Amazon. There's a lot of opportunity if you know what you're doing. So we're going to talk a lot about that. Before doing that, I know you've been on a lot of podcasts and stuff in the past, but for any of my listeners that don't know you, do you mind giving us a rundown on you, before EcomEngine, what you do, and Amazon in general?
Sure. So again, I'm the marketing manager at EcomEngine. And so today my job is to help Amazon sellers get the information, the training, and the tools that they need to be successful. And with EcomEngine, of course, we have a suite of tools. Feedback 5 is reputation management. So that's where a lot of the knowledge I'll share with you today comes from that, because it's a feedback and review management tool that's been in the industry for over a decade. So we have a lot of valuable information from sellers using that tool. And then we have Restock Pro, which is FBA inventory management. We have a repricer called Smart Price and a product research tool called Market Scout. But I've been with EcomEngine for 5 years. And prior to that, I worked in e-commerce for Snagajob, which was based here in Richmond. And I worked at Verizon for quite some time as well, working with small to medium-sized businesses, doing PPC management, getting websites up and running. So I have a variety, to my background, but e-commerce and marketing is definitely, at the heart of it.
Perfect. Thank you. What would you say to this statement? It's not important to get reviews on Amazon if you're a seller.
Oh, I would say that's false. Absolutely false.
Why? Why are reviews? Let's take it from someone. Let's pretend somebody's listening to this and they don't know why reviews are important, how everything gets factored in, because I feel like a lot of people make a lot of assumptions and just look at the high level stuff that's being talked about in Facebook groups and don't realize that there's a lot of low hanging fruit and just best business practices, period, to approach when getting reviews. So,
right.
So it's false. Tell me why.
And I hear a lot of even just really experienced sellers or, people that already have a product that's getting a lot of reviews saying, I have enough reviews already. Do I really need any more? And the answer is yes. Product reviews are crucial to your success on Amazon. And they impact your visibility and as well as your options for advertising, but they're social proof for the buyer to know that your product is good quality, that your brand is reliable and trustworthy. And there's some experts that have said that you need at least 21 reviews to be successful, but it's not just about the quantity, it's the quality is the more important piece. And also having very new and recent reviews. So to this statement, when I hear people say, I have plenty of reviews, I don't need any more. Well, your product will start to look old and stale if you don't have new recent reviews. So it's important to make sure that you're constantly getting new reviews, so it shows that your product is still relevant in the marketplace. So there's the formula that I say is the quantity of reviews plus quality plus recency. Those are the three factors that will lead to success. But definitely reviews are crucial.
So if we were looking at, let's say, I can't imagine me doing a yoga move right now, but like, let's say that I was decided to get into yoga and I searched for blue yoga mat, and I'm looking at probably a dizzying amount of blue yoga pads, all in the same position, all with a white background on the product detail page. What would you think would be like the top two things that would get me to decide which one I should buy?
I mean, seeing the number of reviews and the 5-star reviews. So if you see a product that has 5 stars, but there's only 5 reviews versus maybe a product with 4 or 4.5 stars, but they have thousands of reviews, it's social proof that plenty of other people have taken the risk to buy this item and have been satisfied. Whereas when you have very few reviews, it almost shows a reflection of how many people have actually purchased that to this point. And even if it's a 5-star review, you don't want to be the one to risk purchasing that item when only a couple people have purchased it this time. So, so quantity is important, but seeing that 4 or 5-star review and the volume associated with that is important.
I agree 100%. You get access to see probably a ton of sellers, things that they want to show and what's working and what's not. Have you guys just, I don't know. Do you guys know if there's a ratio of, like, I get it. If you have 1,000 reviews and somebody else has 50 reviews and 1,000 reviews at 3.5 stars and the 50 reviews at 4.5 stars, I like the chances of the 4.5 star one actually selling better based on those reviews. Like, I believe quality really does matter, but have you figured out what that ratio is? Does half a star make a difference versus how many reviews?
No, unfortunately, we don't have data that dives into that, but I think it varies so widely depending on the competition, the category. So I think there's probably some really smart data scientists out there that could probably dive into that, probably at Amazon. But no, unfortunately, we don't have that data at our fingertips.
Yeah, I'm trying to think myself, like, at what point do I sacrifice a star in quality for an amount of reviews? I don't think there is an amount.
Right.
I believe I'd go with 4.5, 50 reviews.
It probably depends on the
2,000.
price of the product too, and how much of an investment you're making, how much risk you're willing to take. So.
Absolutely. So where would somebody, like, to get product reviews from? Let's pretend private label product. Somebody is, they obviously, it doesn't sneak up on you, the launch, like, when it's coming, you're in control of that. Do you have any best practices at what stage would you think about when it comes to product reviews?
I think when launching a product, of course, there's the early reviewer program that Amazon has. There's Amazon Vine. So there's several programs out there that are certainly effective and approved programs. There's a lot of black hat tactics, and I would just encourage you to stay away from those. And in the end, the ones that are doing it the right way will win. And so a quick win by using black hat tactics will not be the way to go in the long run. So just making sure that you're always following policies and just really asking on every single order. If you don't ask, you're not going to get them. So very few buyers are motivated to leave positive reviews or positive feedback unless asked. So just like if you go out to a restaurant, people are more likely to complain and tell their friends if they had a negative experience than rave about a great experience. The ones that are in the middle and meets their expectation, you really have to motivate them to leave a review.
Agreed. I have mixed feelings. I definitely think deploying the early reviewer programs a must do, but I've not had success with it personally. I know a lot of people who have, and my issue with it really comes into being, like, if they told me almost at any price, enroll these products, early reviewer program, and you'd get your reviews within 10 days. It feels like I can bank on that. It's going to have an impact on my PPC when I start. But in your experience, do you feel like certain categories maybe do better with the early reviewer program, or do you have any other insight in the early reviewer program that perhaps I'm just not aware of?
No, I mean, we've heard mixed reviews too. So, but I would just say based on the cost, it's fairly inexpensive. So
Sure.
I would say it's worth giving it a shot. But a lot of it depends on the product itself. I mean, everything starts with, you got to have a great product to begin with. So, but no, I've heard mixed reviews about the early reviewer program as well.
Okay. So early reviewer program is one that you can just kick in immediately. I'd like the earliest one to start. Now, when you start, what would be the next form of getting product reviews that you think a new seller or just somebody launching a PL for the first time should consider?
So, I mean, I think just having a system set up, whether it's manual through buyer seller messaging and Seller Central that you're asking for reviews, or if you're using a third-party tool to automate that. If you're brand new, you might not be ready for the third-party tool yet. You might be able to manage it on your own, but just making sure that you're requesting feedback and reviews on all of your orders, at least when it makes sense. Of course, if it's a refunded order or if it's a defective SKU, you know, you don't want to ask on those, but making sure that you're asking on every order. So, you know, most sellers are seeing about 3 to 5%. That's very good if you can get 3 to 5% return response rate for reviews and feedback. So, you know, for every 100 that you email, you know, you're only going to get a couple, and that's if you're getting a good response rate. So if you're not asking, it's going to be even harder.
Yeah, I'm a fan of even when you're getting those first few orders, to have an automation, like a feedback 5, like not just because you're here either, like I highly recommend it, but having something like that set up even from the early stages so that you don't even need to think about it, because you only have so much bandwidth to apply to your business. And if you're launching on Amazon, you better bring it all to bear on other things. And if there's very affordable automations out there like Feedback 5 to handle that, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that if you get a negative review and you only have a handful of reviews, that negative review will really bring your overall rating down. So just making sure that you set up alerts for negative feedback and negative reviews, which Feedback 5 can do as well. So just making sure that you're notified. So if it's negative feedback, you can, you know, offer good customer service, hopefully satisfy that buyer, and in return, they might even you know, change their review from a 2-star to a 4-star if you made the experience better for them, and maybe, you know, let them try another product or something. So reviews, of course, you can't ask them to remove or update, but feedback you can. But either way, when you have fewer reviews and feedback, one negative can harm you a lot more.
Devastating.
So at the beginning, especially, it's important to be notified anytime you get a negative.
Yeah, let's unpack a little bit of that automated side, that once you get an order and you want to follow up, or even manual, I guess this doesn't matter. However, you're following up with the buyer to solicit feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone knows, even if they don't know the details, that that's a very delicate subject with Amazon because of past abuses. What are some best practices there on really the verbiage to use when soliciting feedback from an Amazon buyer?
Sure. So, oops, did my video just go off?
It's all good. Yeah, you're good.
So you mentioned that that it's a sensitive subject to request for reviews or feedback, and making sure that you're doing it the right way. And it's even more sensitive for the folks that have been restricted from buyer seller messaging. So when you receive an email from Amazon saying that you're restricted from buyer seller messaging, they give a list of about 8 or 10 items that are potential reasons why you were restricted, but it's the same templated email that everybody receives. So it's very hard for the seller to understand which of those reasons was why they were restricted. So, you know, many sellers just very innocently may have had something in their email that was perceived or interpreted as violating policy, but that was not their intent. And in some cases, you know, sellers knew what they were doing. But regardless, if you're restricted from buyer seller messaging, there is the request a review button now in Seller Central, that even those who have been restricted from buyer seller messaging can use that button. So, and all sellers can use it.
But it's such a manual process. I'm going to toss it up for you.
And for those who aren't familiar with it, it was late 2019 that Amazon released this. It's in the orders section of Seller Central in the top right corner. If you click on an order, it's a little gray button that says request a review. And the benefit of this is that Amazon is sending an email directly to your buyer, and they're asking for both a product review and seller feedback. So it's a templated email. It has an image of the items that they purchased.
It's nice
for both. And they've done the work on optimizing the messaging for you.
For once.
And you can be 100% confident that it's safe and you're not going to be flagged as violating policy because Amazon is sending that message. But to your point, it is also a very manual process to click that button for each order, especially for larger sellers.
Something, you guys have a solution for this, but that manual process. But before that, something that I noticed with the manual review process versus the automatic email that goes out to the buyer is I'm having significantly better conversions than we mentioned 3 to 5% before. I'm noticing that we're higher, whereas I was lower before by doing the manual process of reaching out. Or do you see that too?
No, we have not seen that, but we have seen better results from the request a review button. We have compared that to some of our customers using the buyer seller messaging in Feedback 5.
Well, that's what I meant. The manual request a review button versus the automatic email solicitation. Like I'm noticing that manual request a review button is having significantly better conversion for
Right.
me than the other. Do you see that?
Yes, we are seeing that, and we're actually getting ready to publish a case study. We worked closely with an agency, Marknology, and a lot of their clients use Feedback 5. So we have a case study that we're getting ready to publish that shares some of that data and what sellers are seeing when they switch from buyer seller messaging to the request a review automation.
Any sneak peeks, like how many percentage points higher that are you seeing?
So about 20 to 30% lift in their response rate is what they're seeing. So
That's
not that they're getting a 20 to 30%
Right.
response rate, but just a lift.
Well, that's significant.
Right.
Yeah, that's significant for just validation, social validation of your product, and also to offset the occasional negative review that happens. Like you can't make everyone happy. So,
Right.
and nowadays your saboteurs that sometimes want to jump on your listing and give you a negative review. So yeah, 20% lift is significant.
Right.
You guys figured out a way to automate this.
We did. So EcomEngine worked very closely with Amazon earlier this year. And we have now a campaign set up in Feedback 5 that accesses the request a review button in Seller Central. So our Feedback 5 campaign will trigger the button to send the message to your orders. And so not only does it automate just the clicking of the button and sending that email, but it's also helping you to automate the timing. So Amazon allows you to just use the request a review button between 5 and 30 days after the item is delivered. And in Feedback 5, you can say you want to do it at 7 days after delivery or 10 days after delivery or 5 days for all of your items, or by ASIN. Maybe certain ASINs you want to send at 5 days after delivery. Maybe some you want, if you sell vitamins and they need 30 days to see how, they're feeling after using them, maybe you send it 30 days out. So you can set up all that timing, that flexibility. You can also exclude refunded orders so that you're not requesting reviews or feedback on refunded orders. So there's some extra flexibility in terms of that automation. And another benefit of this button is it automatically translates the feedback and review request in the language of choice that the buyer has in their Amazon settings.
Oh,
So you don't have to do that translation. Amazon's doing all of that for you. So
I didn't know this.
yeah.
That's actually really good. I've not heard of that feature actually anywhere else that it does that. That's very impactful. I was actually speaking to someone wondering, like, we were talking initially about the impact of having, say, Spanish keywords in the US, having Spanish keywords on the back end, at least for PPC purposes, for people that search in another language. And that, that had me going down the rabbit hole of the automatic follow-ups for reviews. How many of those people that, spoke Spanish or another language received this in English, and the likelihood of them leaving a review had to be 0. But receiving it, probably shocking to the customer, actually receiving it in the language, because they're probably accustomed to receiving all these things in English because they buy in the US and sellers are not customizing this. That's very impactful. That's a really nice touch. I'm impressed.
Right. So the request a review button in the end, buyer seller messaging is still allowed. You can do a lot of customization with that. So many sellers still want that flexibility, but there is risk. As we've said, some sellers have seen, restriction messages, and it's hard to even figure out why in some cases. So if you want to go the safest route and be 100% confident that you're compliant with Amazon, then the request a review button is the way to go. And automating with Feedback 5 is definitely the easy way.
So for sellers that haven't really utilized the request a review button, I still say the manual request a review button, but if they haven't utilized that, so they understand, how does it work in the sense of, what if they're going to go use it, but the buyer already left a review? How would that work?
So in feedback 5, at least you can set your campaign to not send it or not click the request or review button if a review or feedback has already been left.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine somebody leaving a negative review and then they receive 2 days later a request to give us a 5-star review on our services.
Right. That's only going to cause an issue.
Yeah. Okay. So what about for anyone that wants to be a caveman about this and wants to manually go in and do it? Do they even have the option to click this button inside of Seller Central to request a review if a review was already left?
I don't think it will allow you to do that, because Amazon's
No.
smart enough to know when you go in there, it'll just be shaded out, grayed out, so it won't give you the option to actually click that button. And it does the same thing if you're outside of that 5 to 30 day window as well.
Yeah. Well, when this feature came out, like you said, I think late 2019, I immediately started training a paid virtual assistant around the clock. As soon as I noticed, I didn't know it was a 20 to 30% increase, but I noticed that it was working much better. To me, 30% is huge. So I immediately hired someone around the clock, which is thousands of orders, to keep manually requesting this, like hitting that button. So when you guys rolled that out, this actually saved me a lot of money just on the labor side of things in doing this. So yeah, that's absolutely amazing. What about any strategies you have for making the two features work in tandem? So the email automation follow-up should come, X amount of days after, versus then following up with the automated manual request a review button?
Well, I mean, we only encourage sellers to send one feedback or review request per order. So, so either do a buyer-seller messaging request or use the request of review button, but not both. So in feedback 5, you can choose which campaign you want to do. And you can certainly choose, if certain ASINs you want to do the buyer-seller messaging and certain ASINs you want to use the request or review button, you can. But we highly recommend just one request per order.
Okay, so let's move on to other types of ways that people can get product reviews. What are some other ways on Amazon that someone nowadays can get an Amazon product review?
Well, certainly just by driving traffic to, off Amazon to your Amazon listing. You can also use influencers, try to find influencers to promote your product. As we mentioned, the Amazon Vine program, the Vine Voices, are a great resource to order your products and leave reviews. They're experts at leaving reviews, so they leave some pretty amazing reviews sometimes. They are categorized, though it does indicate that they're part of the Amazon Vine program when they do leave a review. So yeah, but I mean, I think just being as honest and following policies and not going, outside of policy, it just is the way to go. So that's the way to win in the long run.
Absolutely. What else? What other things could you share with sellers right now, just that they maybe should be aware of Amazon in general, or just best practices to succeed, the reviews, seller feedback, anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think just making sure, I mean, this sounds simple, but just making sure that you understand that product reviews are different from seller feedback. So a customer review or a product review is about the product itself. That's about the quality. Did the item function as they expected? So that's all about the product. And then seller feedback is all about the buyer's experience. And they do impact you differently. The items that go into seller feedback are whether or not the item arrived on time. So of course, if you're, selling through FBA, that's Amazon's responsibility. But if you're fulfilling orders on your own, then you need to make sure to get the orders to the buyer on time. Also making sure the item is as described, that can impact your seller feedback. So making sure all of your listings are 100% accurate, and providing prompt and courteous service is the other item that you can get rated on. So when you're contacted for any reason, just make sure to provide really good customer service, respond promptly, and then of course the buyer can leave comments after that as well. But knowing that there are differences between a review and feedback. Reviews, for instance, don't impact your order defect rate, but seller feedback does. And you can ask a buyer to remove negative feedback or to change their feedback rating, but you cannot do that with reviews. So there is a difference there, but oftentimes in the industry, people use the word review interchangeably when they're talking about both. So
for me, feedback and reviews are both extremely important. Even though and I think that's a throwback from eBay selling days, like before Amazon. That was everything. If your seller feedback was bad, you just didn't get any sales. On Amazon though, it's almost shocking that, like, what sort of an impact do you feel that a seller's feedback has to their sales if they're matching the same price on an FBA offering?
As far as feedback, I mean, it'll certainly impact your Amazon SEO. If your feedback rating, the lower it is, then your competition is going to beat you out for that item. It's going to be harder to win the buy box.
So you feel like the person, like, say there's 5 sellers all matching at $20 on the same product, that the way they divvy up the percentage of eyeballs or time on the box, that the seller feedback impacts that?
I do, yes. Seller feedback, we've definitely seen impacts that. In fact, even Smart Price, our algorithmic repricer, looks at a lot of different data to help sellers win the buy box more often. And feedback is definitely a factor that goes into that. So when pricing or repricing your items on Amazon, it's important to be priced very competitively, but also making sure that you have good, strong seller feedback as well.
Oh, I'm going to have to look at it again. I stay as close to 100% as possible. Like, just amazing all the time. It's my business. It's my baby. That's how I want to do it. But I feel like a lot of sellers don't know that. They just, whatever, it's on FBA, so it doesn't matter. That's awesome to know.
Well, and I would also say to take a close look at, order defect rate. That's extremely important. And I know there's been some changes recently due to the pandemic and supply chain and shipping delays and supply chain issues. Back in April, Amazon announced that they were putting a pause on looking closely at those metrics and restricting or suspending any sellers if their order defect rate had gone above 1%. But that pause was only in effect till May 31st. So as of June 1st, we're back to business as usual. Amazon is looking closely at order defect rate. And of course, anything that happened during that time period, they actually just sent an email out on Friday that any of the shipping delays or cancellations and such that happened, they're not factoring that in. But from June 1st going forward, they're looking very closely at that data. And I would encourage you to try to have an order defect rate of 0%, but Amazon, if you have anything over 1%, then you're at risk for suspension. So negative feedback plays very closely into that. And so it's important to try to get it removed or at least update it if you can.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your time and doing that. I want to be respectful of your time. I feel like that was a very thorough soup to nuts coverage of reviews and order defect rate. So is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I would just say, at EcomEngine, we strive to be helpful. And so we offer free buyer-seller messaging optimization. Even if you're not our customer, we're happy to look at what you're saying in your messages, give you some tips on, how to tweak your content, your subject lines, what might perform better. Or if you are restricted from buyer-seller messaging, we're happy to take a look at that and see if we can help understand.
At no charge.
Why, right, no charge, it's free. And then we also do product review consultations, so we can talk about your current strategy and what programs might work better for you. So if you just go to EcomEngine.com, up under services, then there's a couple of opportunities just to have a free conversation with us and just talk to us and see what we can do to help.
Well, apparently I didn't do a very good job sharing that part in my group, because every week in the group, somebody's like, can you check out my messages and stuff like that? And it's very time consuming to do, and I can't get to all of it. I guess you know what I'm going to be sending them next. What's the URL? Where do they go?
So if you go to EcomEngine.com and then up in the top navigation under services, and we have a couple articles in our help center about, subject lines that perform best and different ideas of things that you can do to tweak your content, your buyer-seller messaging. But then again, the request a review button is the safest way to go. So I would also encourage people to give that a try. It's not only the safest, but we're seeing really good response rates from that also.
Sure. And that would probably be the best way to get a hold of you as well, or is there another way to get a hold of you?
Sure. Or I know I have a long last name, so you can reach me at just Colleen, Colleen, at EcomEngine.com.
Perfect. And before letting you go, something I like to ask everybody at the very end is books. I'm a huge book reader. What is your favorite book and why?
So I have 3 young children, so I don't get a lot of time to read read books. But
an audiobook.
Yes, but I do have books, reading them, books at bedtime. But this is a book that our organization has all read and we love. It's Inbound Organization. So we use HubSpot for our customer database and marketing and for our website. And this is all about how to be helpful first. So it's all about, the more that you're helpful to somebody, then the more likely they are to do business with you when they need your services or, are ready to work with you. So getting away from the old school car salesman being pushy, it's all about just being helpful, providing content. And when the consumer or buyer or Amazon seller is ready, hopefully that we're top of mind when they're ready for a service that we can offer.
Oh, that's awesome. I've not heard of that book either, but there is a book. I love HubSpot, but there's an actual book, Something Sales Something, written by like the first CMO, I think, of HubSpot, who was actually an engineer, and they brought him in. Oh, amazing book. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'll order that right after we finish this.
Yeah, and it's a pretty easy read the way that they have it formatted too. So it has a lot of good case studies and so.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time. I'm positive you'll be back on for other topics. And thank you so much again on behalf of South Florida FBA Amazon sellers for you guys' sponsorship. You guys are amazing. I love using your tools. So anybody that wants to reach out, especially now that I know people can just get their verbiage looked at, I am sending that link immediately.
Feel free.
Thank you so much.
Yes, stay well, stay positive, everybody.
Yes, have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Liked what you heard and want to stay connected? Join our Facebook group or find me anywhere on social media at Wizards of Amazon or text the word Amazon to 69922.